Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, this is At the Helm Sports. I'm your host, Derek Helm. Thank you for joining me for episode 131. Please be sure to follow and subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Leave those 5-star reviews. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit that like button. Down in the comments section, tell me, would you rather play Scotty Scheffler this week or Colin Morikawa? Now, I know in a vacuum, that's a pretty dumb question, but considering their salaries this week and how it's a much weaker field than what we've had recently, I actually think it's a valid question. So leave that down in the comments. But this week, we will quickly recap the PGA Championship, dive into the Charles Schwab Challenge. As you can see, I am not in my regular studio. This week has been absolute chaos. So, really, just trying to squeeze this show in here as quickly as possible, get as much information out in a little amount of time as possible. So, wanted to do the show, and I am in a hot box basically right now. So, if you see my face really red, it is because I'm sweating my ass off. But wanted to get this out. So, quickly, we could recap the PGA Championship. I heard a lot of people whining about the course, and granted, I agree to an extent. You know, a major venue, you want to see a much more challenging task and just bad shots being penalized more and maybe not so many birdie attempts. But overall, I think the tournament was great. I think it was very entertaining. Obviously, good for Xander. He did his thing. You know, I bet him at the Masters. I said, you know, there's only so long a guy can play this well and come away without a win. And at some point, I said the major win was coming. Unfortunately, it wasn't when I was on him, but good for Xander. I couldn't bet him at his number, and just there was other guys I went to, one of which was Rom, which clearly was a mistake, but that's neither here nor there. So good for Xander, but it was absolutely heartbreaking. I mean, I know I'm not the only one that had a Bryson ticket, but as a lot of you know, I've said it before on the podcast, you know, Bryson is my favorite golfer, as you can see in the background. But I think it was the 2016 Masters. They did like a little thing on him, and I heard him talking, and just I was like, I kind of like this guy. And back then, the book I used offered top 25s. I bet him top 25 at a really good number. He hit it. Loved him ever since. Then the first ever PGA tournament I went to was the Northern Trust in I think 2018. He ran away with it, and I bet so much money on him that week. So he's won me the most money pretty much of any golfer, and just I've always been a fan. So that was brutal seeing that putt drop just for numerous reasons, but it was a brutal Sunday overall for me. I mean, from a betting standpoint, obviously with the outrights, and then from a DraftKings standpoint, I sat in 12th place going into Sunday and had Colin Morikawa and Thigala in that lineup. Brooks did his whatever he was doing on Saturday, so he hurt that lineup a little bit, but it didn't work out very well. But overall, I thought it was very entertaining. And although I'm not a big Xander fan, I did actually enjoy seeing him win and getting that monkey off his back. But this week we can dive into the Charles Schwab Challenge. Played at Colonial Country Club, underwent a restoration over the last year. Really nothing crazy. I've heard a lot of people talking about restoration, restoration, a little bit different. You know, restoration is kind of getting it closer to the original design of the course, but really they just changed a couple tees, some sight lines, added a tiny bit of yardage, really not going to make a huge difference. I think the biggest thing that's going to change is the fact that they redid all the grass and especially the greens. So redoing the greens probably makes them a little bit firmer and just maybe they play a little bit different because we've seen that, you know, course history matters quite a bit here. So these guys playing on some new green complexes, just it might throw a little monkey wrench in things, but I don't think the restoration is really going to change too much. Now they have had a ton of rain. I think Wednesday it's supposed to absolutely pour, so maybe that softens the conditions a little bit and softens the greens a bit. But it's going to be interesting to see. So Colonial is a 7,280 yard par 70 with very small bent grass greens. There's 2 par 5s, 4 par 3s, 12 par 4s. 7 of those par 4s are 400 to 450 yards. Fairways are very difficult to hit here. Only about 57% of fairways are hit. Now, accuracy over distance is definitely the strategy you want here. Average drive only comes in at about 277 yards. Because of that reason, shorter course. There are some dog legs. The restoration also took out a couple trees and some bunkers, but there is still trouble. So you definitely want to be accurate here. And you definitely want to be hitting out of the fairways because these greens, as I said, they are small. They are difficult to hit. And if they are playing firm, it is very hard to hold these greens. So 25% of shots come from 150 to 175 yards. The bulk of them are between 125 and 200 yards. And what we've seen with this course in the past is even guys hitting wedges. I mean, you're going to miss greens here. It's not an automatic just because you're hitting a wedge that you're going to stick a green here. So definitely want to keep that in mind. You want guys that are good on approach. Basically, this is going to be approach and putting this week that come away with a win usually here. However, with the small greens, you definitely need to have some around the green game. Around the green historically hasn't really been incredibly difficult here. So I don't think that you're a complete write off if you're not a wizard around the greens here, but it's definitely going to come into play a little bit. Really, it's just going to be bogey avoidance and making putts on your scoring opportunities here that we're going to see. Whoever hits their irons the best and putts the best is probably going to come away the winner. So if we dive into the field, it's not a terrible field, especially towards the top. Obviously, we have Scotty here. I think a lot of people are surprised that he's playing here, but it's in Texas. He loves playing in Texas. So 13,300 is a pretty lofty price there, but it's Scotty's far and away the best golfer in this field, as he is pretty much every week, but even more so this week. And I said it at the top, it's going to be a decision. Colin Morikawa, I love here. He's been playing great golf. You know, obviously couldn't make a putt on Sunday, so that didn't really go well for him. But outside of that, I mean, he's had a number of good finishes over the past month or so, basically since the Masters. I mean, you have fourth at the PGA Championship, 16th at Wells Fargo, ninth at the Heritage, third at the Masters. So he's got a number of good finishes, and it's really interesting how he's been finishing because a lot of it's been off the tee. He's first in fairways gained over the last 24 rounds, eighth around the green. I mean, it's off the tee and around the green, and putting is not usually what you think of when you think of Colin Morikawa, but that's what he's been getting it done with. So he's also top 10 in the par four scoring. So I love Morikawa. I've made an outright on him at 14 to 1. And I really like his chances this week with how well he's been playing. Next, if we go a little bit further down, I'm having a little bit of trouble where I want to go here because if I'm gonna play Scotty and Colin, I probably can't fit a lot of guys in this range, and I'm gonna have to dip down quite a bit. And once we dip down past this range, I do think there is quite a drop off, and you can actually make a case that some of the guys down in the eights are almost as good of golfers as some of these guys in the nines. But just to talk through it real quick, Spieth has not been good at all, but has played well in Texas, has played well at this course. So I could see him coming out at very low ownership. And if he's really low, it might be interesting to throw him in there in a couple lineups. Homa, I don't love for this course. He has had a top 10 here in the past, but 10,400. I just think if I'm playing Scotty and Colin, unfortunately, he's probably not going to get there for me. Finau, I'm considering just, we said ball striking is going to be key here. He's He's great on approach, eighth over the last 24 rounds. He's 10th in opportunities gained. So on small greens, he has a propensity to be able to put it inside of 15 feet. So we do like that. And he's just been striking the ball very well. Now, the problem is the putter really hasn't been there for him. And you're going to have to make putts here to save par and to capitalize on scoring opportunities. So don't know if I can get there on Finau. Also, want to see his ownership because I do think that he's going to be very popular this week. I think if people aren't going to the top, a lot of lineups probably will actually start with Tony Finau. Next, we have Siwoo Kim. It's very similar to Tony Finau. I mean, basically, it's if the putter shows up with how well he's striking the ball, he could absolutely play well here. So I could definitely see him being lower owned, and basically it's just a lower owned version of Finau in some ways. So I do have a little interest in him. Brian Harmon is another one. Just we want to live in the fairways here, and we know he can do that. He's also good at the bogey avoidance. He's top 20 in strokes gained approach, and we know the putter can get hot from time to time. So 9,500, I'm considering Harmon. Another guy though I've talked up quite a bit already, so he could be popular. Skipping over Sung Jae. As of right now, I'm actually thinking about fading Tom Hoagie. I think he might actually be the highest owned this week. Good price, 9,300. I mean, we know what he can do with the irons, and he's great with the wedges. The putter's been hit or miss, but he's been putting okay recently. Obviously, last week didn't work out too well, but I do think that he's going to be very popular here. Now, full transparency, I have made an outright on him at 50-1 with top six each way. So I do like his chances here, but if he's going to be astronomically owned, I'm fine fading him. Then Christian Bezadenhout is a guy I literally never play, but just this course seems so suited for him. But another guy I want to look at his ownership before I make a final decision, because if Billy Horschel is much lower than him, I'm fine going to Horschel. He played well last week, has played well recently. That this is another course that I think suits him very well. Has putted well on bent grass in the past, so I do think that it makes sense for him. I think he can go back to Denny McCarthy. He was popular last week, but didn't play well. But it's a short course, kind of plays to his suits, and if he can get the putter going, I think he can make some noise. I like Chris Kirk a bit here. Good again in that opportunities game that I like. He's great around the green. Pretty good at par four scoring. Good with the wedges. So I'm thinking about Chris Kirk here at 8,400. I think Tom Kim might be a little bit sneaky this week. 8,200, like what I saw last week. There was a couple hiccups here and there, but it's granted he's still young playing in majors. So 8,200, I think he'll go overlooked, and I think it's a good price for him. I think this is a course that could definitely suit Tom Kim. I thought about making the outright on him, couldn't really get there, but I do like Thomas Dietrich quite a bit as well at 8,000 flat. I mean, this is a guy fourth last week at the PGA. He missed the cut at the Byron Nelson, but 28th at Heritage, second in Houston, 17th at the Valspar. So a bunch of good finishes here. He's gained strokes putting in 6 straight tournaments, gained off the tee in 5 of 6, and gained on approach in 4 of his last 5. So it's a guy that's been playing really good golf. And I do think that if he can keep the putter going, he makes some sense here at only 8,000. Next, we have Akshay Bhatia, 7,900. I like him as well. I've made an outright on him at 50-1 with the top 6 each way. Now, generally, we see that older golfers are the ones that tend to play well here, but I just think this is a course that could definitely fit him. Second on approach over the last 24 rounds, 11th in opportunities gained, 14th in bogey avoidance. He is second on those par fours from 400 to 450 yards. He's good at putting inside 5 to 10 feet, good on that proximity range, 175 to 200. So I like Bhatia's game for here. It's not going to be a birdie fest, so I kind of do like him more in birdie fests, but he's great on approach and been great with the irons. So I like Bhatia quite a bit here. Next, Aaron Rise, another guy that's been playing really good golf. I want to see where his ownership gets, because statistically, he looks to rate out really well. 6th on approach, 15th in opportunities gained, 4th in bogey avoidance, 2nd in fairways gained behind only Morikawa. So his game should fit here pretty well. Another guy that you probably like on a little bit more difficult scoring conditions, and this place is not going to give you a ton of birdies. So do like that. I'm considering Berger. I think that he's been playing better golf recently since coming back from the injury. And this is a place where he's won in the past. I've made an outright on him at 50-1. And with the top 6 each way, actually, sorry, he was 66-1. So I just, when I saw that number, and it's a guy that's played well here before and showing some signs of life, I think that's a really good number. And if he comes in low enough owned in Draftkings, I'm definitely willing to play him. If he gets a little bit of steam, I think I'll just hang out with the outright and probably fade him on Draftkings. Hubbard is another guy. I think his ball striking can play well here. Pretty good at the par fours. So 7,700, I think, is a good price for him. And then I'm going to try and keep it pretty tight here. Going to have to play some cheaper guys, especially if I'm playing Scotty. But I think Glover's going to be very popular, but I don't care. I bet him at 66-1 with the top 6 each way. Just he statistically looks to be a great fit for here, although he hasn't really played incredible here in the past. But I do like him quite a bit at 7,500. And then down here a little bit lower, I'm not crazy about a lot of guys. Kind of got to make some final decisions. Check the newsletter. I will have basically my final decisions on all that. But maybe some Doug Gim. I do think that this is a course that could possibly suit him. I think that this sets up well also for Brendan Todd at 7,000. So I like him. Shorter course. He's going to live in the fairway. So I do like Todd here. Nate Lashley's a guy that I think can play well here. Another guy that'll find fairways, good with the putter. He's got a good short game and pretty good on approach. So I like Lash. Maybe some SH Kim, possibly. CT Pan, I think, is a guy that could show up here at only 6,500. So that's a pretty good low price there for a guy that I think could play well here. Andrew Novak is another one I'm considering at only 6,300. And then there's really not much I like down here. Dylan Wu, I just 14th on strokes gained approach. He's 12th from that 150 to 175 range, and he is in the top third of the field from 400 to 450. So I do like that for him. But that's really all I'm looking at for the time being. As I said, I will add some more guys, cheaper guys, especially if I'm playing Scotty, to the newsletter. So definitely check that out on Substack. Just check out the Helm Sports, or it should be in the description of this. But that's pretty much what I'm thinking for this week. It does look like we could get some serious wins on, especially on Thursday, but we've seen it absolutely wreak havoc here in the past. So I definitely think that's something to consider, that we might get a ton of wind here. Probably going to want some guys that are pretty good around the green and can avoid bogeys, because I think it could definitely play difficult. We could see maybe a winning score of -8, -9, somewhere around there, depending on how crazy the wind gets. But really, you want some guys that have some experience here, but really looking for guys that are great with the irons, the wedges, and can make some putts here. So that's what I'm looking at for this week. To recap my bets for the Charles Schwab, so far I have Colin Morikawa at 14 to 1. Just really love where his game is at. Love the fact that the short game is coming around and he's been putting very well. So I do like him quite a bit. I have Tom Hoagie at 50 to 1 with a top 6 each way. Same thing I said. It's just his irons are dialed in. I think this is a course that fits him very well. And if he gets the putter going, he will definitely be up there. Also have Akshay Bhatia. Love his irons. Love how this place suits him. Doesn't really have a lot of history at this course, but I do think that he could potentially play well. So I have him at 50 to 1 with the top 6 each way. Then we're taking a chance on Daniel Berger. I've seen some flashes here, and at 66 to 1 with the top 6 each way, I think it's definitely worth a shot on a guy that's already won at this course and played well before. So I do like him. And then last, I have Lucas Glover, who also is incredible with the irons and just has a little bit of around the green game to go with it. So I like Glover, how he fits here, 66 to 1 with the top 6 each way. That's basically what I'm looking at. You can check thehelmsports.com. I will have all my wagers up there, first round leaders, placements, any tournament matchups that really stick out to me. So check that out. Go to the My Bets tab. As I said, check out the Helm Sports on Substack. I will have the newsletter out on Wednesday, final Draftkings ownership and my core 4, basically everything I'm looking at there. And that's basically it for this week. So thank you for tuning in. As always, check out thehelmsports.com. Thank you for listening. I am your host, Derek Helm. And remember,
just have fun out there.